share with you that today is a day of birthday of Lord Vishwakarma, who is considered as the engineer for the gods and who created the heaven for God. So today we are making a presentation and having this seminar going on for engineers. It's really a good opportunity for me to speak about it. So let me share with you my screen and we will have, I hope it's visible now. Yes. I hope my screen is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Yeah. Thank you. So my today's topic is effects of air and water in ammonia refrigeration system. We all know that air and water are a very important parameters for us. However, as a what happens if this air and water comes into our ammonia refrigeration plants? It's totally different than the human being. So we'll try to study or see what are the causes or how this affects the system and what we can do to have a better system. This refrigeration system, as we call it, is we have two types of refrigeration system. One is the pump circulation or the overfeed liquidation system, and another is the gravity field liquidation system. I'm sure you're well aware about the refrigeration systems, so I'll not go into detail of it. Uh, Typically, electrical energy consumes the largest power in various industries when it is used for refrigeration. If we consider a cold storage application, we consume around 90% of the electrical energy. If it's an ice cream plant or a dairy plant, it almost consumes 70 to 80%. Or a typical frozen plant, maybe 50 to 70%. So any saving on this energy in refrigeration plants directly affects the saving in terms of the total plant and makes plant more efficient or more better performance plants. So when we are why we use ammonia mostly into all these plants, mainly because ammonia is a natural refrigerant. The cost is low, it's highest efficient refrigerant, and of course it is the best. It has got a zero OWP and GWP effect, so it's most natural and a sustainable one. Now, what should be the actual ammonia we should have? We should get a pure ammonia of 99.95%. But normally ammonia is produced as a byproduct of the fertilizer plants, and many times it's when for a bigger plants it's sold into the sold into the containers. The purity or the quality of ammonia is not many times not certified by the manufacturer. So we may not get discount. This is what we should get. This is what we should ask for our supplier to give a purity certificate. But many times we don't get such kind of pure ammonia. This is a pressure temperature chart. I'm sure you're well aware about it. I'm just showing it that our refrigeration system is totally dependent on this pressure temperature chart. All the system design calculation is totally dependent on this refrigeration chart. So this water and the non-condensable gases or the air, mostly the air, but along with that nitrogen, hydrogen, hydrocarbons, they all affect the performance of refrigeration plant. First see what happens with this non-condensable or the air, particularly which contributes to air when it comes into the refrigeration plant. Typically, an ammonia gas, if it is at a 35 degree centigrade and 13.5 kg per centimeter square pressure, it should condense, become from liquid from gas, as if it is removed by using air or water. But at same time, if you have the same pressure, the nitrogen will needs to be at minus 164 degrees centigrade to liquefy. So if nitrogen is present into our system, it will remain in gaseous state. Same thing happens with air or other gases, which we call as a non-condensable gases. It means that during our operation cycle of refrigeration plant, which is typically say condensing is between 35 to 40 degrees centigrade, this does not condense or become liquid. And when they are in the, so and there is no refrigeration effect apart from these gases. And these gases affect the performance of our system. How these gases enter into our system? There are various ways in by which these non-condensable gases or air which enters. One is when we buy the refrigerant or we charge the refrigerant, it may not be the pure one which is required by us. Secondly, the many of the refrigerant plants are tested with dry air or the dry nitrogen, and when doing the evacuation, the proper evacuation is not done. Many times our this do not our vacuum is not maintained to remove the test air or the nitrogen used for testing. It remains in the system. But, we open the certain parts of compressor or other parts into the system. So when these are opened, air may penetrate into that. Again, when we are charging or removing the oil, it is possible that air may enter into that plant from the atmosphere. Secondly, when our plants are running at low temperature applications, particularly below atmospheric pressure, that is at minus 30, 33 degrees centigrade and low temperature plants, if there is a leakage into the pipes, glands, wall stains, bonnets, etc., then ammonia will not come out, particularly the evaporator side, low side, but the air will go in because internal pressure is lower than the outside pressure. That's one big way of entering the ammonia into the system and adds air into the system. And as the air into the systems, the ammonia, sometimes the refrigeration plant, because of the air temperature goes high, and there is a possibility that oil gets decomposition. And if oil is decomposed, there is a catalytic action takes place and it splits the ammonia into nitrogen and hydrogen. If you see when this pressure of the air or the other gases enters into system, it adds the total pressure. So our actual pressure becomes a refrigerant pressure, which should be theoretically as per our refrigerant chart should be the actual pressure for condensation and the non-condensable gases. This total pressure becomes a one pressure. So this pressure is additive. So the more the air pressure is there, or the actual pressure or the condenser discharge pressure will increase. We have a higher pressure onto the discharge side of the system. How we can understand if there is a non-condensable gases in our system or what is the, if we have this air into our system. If you see a typical diffusion system from compressor, air and ammonia both enters into condenser. As the gas starts moving into the condenser and goes to the downside, the ammonia becomes liquid. However, air remains as it is because air does not get condensed here. So if we are able to measure the pressure of our receiver and the temperature of liquid, and we convert that liquid temperature into corresponding saturated pressure, then the pressure difference, that is actual pressure and the refrigerant pressure, can give you a non-condensable pressure of the non-condensable gases. I'll again repeat, the pressure into the actual receiver and the corresponding saturated pressure of the liquid in receiver, the difference between the two is our pressure of non-condensable gases. So that kind of pressure difference is directly affecting our refrigeration system, or that the difference indicates the presence of non-condensable gases. What happens is with non-condensable gases is that because they are free bodies, they do not contribute in any refrigeration effects, and this non-condensable gas or air keeps on moving with the total plant of the ammonia gas from evaporator to compressor and compressor to condenser. It increases the electrical power demand, reduces the refrigeration efficiency because it keeps on occupying the space, decreases the overall system efficiency because our required power is more than actual refrigeration effect achieved. Now, as the air in system is increased, also it increases the pressure and the temperature of the head side of the compressor or the discharge side of the compressor, which puts more strain onto the bearing and drive motors. Belt life gets shortened and gasket seats are continuously ruptured. So the compressor maintenance cost goes high. Also, the increased pressure leads to the increased temperature, which shortens the life of the compressor valves and promotes breakdown of the lubricating oil. As I told you, the lubricating oil mostly we made it with hydrocarbons. Those hydrocarbons can again become non-condensable gases. Then, because of the increase in the temperature, the condenser scaling increases and the maintenance of the condenser increases, reduces the condenser life, and of course the performance of condenser. And if the temperature keeps on increasing, it may lead to ammonia explosion, and ammonia may break into nitrogen and hydrogen. We have no NH3 ammonia, nitrogen and hydrogen. That's nitrogen 1 and 3 hydrogen items. So if they break down, both the nitrogen and hydrogen are non-condensable gases in our operating conditions. This, you can see here the air gets accumulated into the tube side of your refrigerant or on the outside side of the tube. So this generates like an insulation for the heat exchanger, and it reduces the performance of the heat exchanger. If our air capacity, how much air and what is the power typically? If we have a 4% air in weight in our system, the pressure may increase by 7 psi, which will contribute almost to the 6.5% of the refrigerant plant power. Now, this data was calculated by Association of Ammonia Refrigeration for minus 15 evaporating and 38 condensing. This may change when we have a higher, lower evaporating temperatures. So what we do with this air, we have to remove it out. We have to call it purged out. So there are different ways of purging the air. One is the manual purging and another is the automatic purging. The automatic purging and manual purging is doing direct venting from receiver or condenser, and automatic purging is using purger systems. The purger systems can be made with compression of mixture and condensing possible refrigerants, or another way is condensation of refrigerant using a small evaporator and using the refrigerant system from the plant. Both systems are available and it's possible. Typically, in a direct venting or a manual purging system, we provide a purge wall at receiver or at the inlet of the condenser, and we manually operate this wall to the water bottle or the through water container. So, there is a big, you have to take a great precaution when you are doing this because ammonia is a hazardous gas. And if you are venting this ammonia, you must have the proper precautions being taken. The PPE kit must be used. The walls must be properly connected. The walls on the condenser or receiver must be connected to a proper hose, and the hose must be dipped into the water bucket. System has to be totally shut down, and typically if you are purging from the condenser, keep running the condenser fans water for hour or so that if there is any ammonia, it get condensed. And then if you have this then you run the plant, then you start the slowly open the purging wall, and then purging wall you can remove the water, but always keep on smelling the ammonia, watercolor, foam formation in ammonia. In this kind of cases, you have to immediately close the wall. So this is a very risky and tedious process, particularly if your condenser are installed above the plant or in the terrace. It is very difficult for you to operate those things. So I say we recommend do not try to do manual purging without proper precautions. And it happens that due to this, the operators do not do it regularly, and it keeps on having frequency is very low. So it takes a lot of time, needs to shut down the plant, and the possibility of total air removing is also very it's not possible that total air is removed. Possibility of ammonia gas escape is also there, and it may be create a problem to the nearby people. So, and you have to have a very good precautions to be taken continuously. A neglection in the operation may lead to a big problem. Another method is method by compression, in which a compressor and a condensing unit is made with a different refrigerant, and gas is taken from the receiver, and then it is brought into the compressed and brought into the condenser side. So, in case this whenever this condenser gets whenever this condenser the ammonia gets condensed and the uh, non-condensable gases are vented out, and the liquid condensed liquid has been brought into the receiver again. The second part of the system is that you use the refrigerant from the refrigerant system. You have a heat exchanger here, which is cooled down to the -7 degrees centigrade minimum, and then your purge point from condenser or receiver connected or brought into contact with this coil. So if there is ammonia, it becomes condenses and becomes liquid. It is taken back. If there is non-ammonia, you can vent it out. This can be done automatically by using the proper sensors for ammonia sensors for sensing the temperature and pressure difference of the in the vessel. So advantages of automatic purgings are that there is no need of manpower. It operates on its own and possibly capital cost and the maintenance cost. However, what has this shows us a typical when manual purging system has been done. This with PT having no purging, if you see here, this is the design pressure and this is actual pressure. So if there is no purging, the pressure starts going up, and when pressure manual purging is done, pressure drops down. So you operate at a rated condition, but again till the next manual purging cycle, your pressure goes high and you spend a lot of money and problems and creates problems to the system. This is a typical example we found out with the two-stage piston compressor systems. When there was no purger installed, the discharge pressure was very high, and total power was required was very high. From the when the purging system was installed, pressure from 16 kg dropped down to 12 kg, and you can see the saving in the this was done in India, so I actually originally it was calculated for the Indian rupees, converted into the peso. So its cost. Then these are the other some classic examples when you are using automatic purging system into the freezing plant or a potato cold storage.
Excuse me, Sir Anand,
Yes,
please share your presentation.
screen.
Please share.
Yes.
Please share.
And then your presentation was, you have to reshare it again. We cannot
I,
see your presentation.
okay, I'll share again. Is it visible now,
Yeah,
sir?
please reshare. Okay.
So shall I
Thank
go
you.
back for few
Thank you.
slides?
Please
Yeah,
proceed.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Anand. Please proceed.
Yeah,
Proceed now.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Thank you, Cesar.
so I will start with this manual purging operation. If you are having doing manual purging, when purging is not there, we have the pressure goes on. This is our design pressure level. This is actual pressure level. So when there is no purging, our level goes high. And when we do the manual purging, we reach to the design level. But again, next time, till the next time the purging is done, the pressure starts increasing. So in case of automatic purging, this level is continuously maintained at design pressure and no need of, it saves a lot of energy and saving. This is a typical example showing the actual pressure, actual install performance of air purger. Here the pressure was almost 16 kg, and after installing purger, it brought down to 12 kg. So the power was dropped down from 157 kilowatt to 139 kilowatt, and total saving in a year was almost 1 million peso. These are the two other examples of purging, benefits of purging. This is for the freezing plant at minus 40 degrees centigrade and 13.7 or 38-degree condensing temperature. The refrigeration plant capacity was 500 kilowatt, and the actual pressure has gone up to 15.2 kg per centimeter square. You can see only 1.5 kg pressure higher. So energy saving was 19 kilowatts per hour. And considering the peso cost of 10 peso per kilowatt, saving was 1.14 million pesos per year. In a typical potato cold storage, which is operating at minus 7 to minus 10 degree evaporating condition, for same condensing temperature, a 5,000 metric potato cold storage is typically made with the 580, 520 kilowatt refrigeration capacity. The power calculation due to increase in the discharge pressure is around 165 kilowatts, and that's resulted in 17 kilowatts per hour saving. And potato in India is normally run only around 8 to 10 months. So 5,000 hours operation, it saved 850,000 peso in a year. This is a photograph of actual purger, which is with the inbuilt compressor system. And this is a photograph of an air purger, which has got a heat exchanger, which uses the inbuilt refrigeration system. The installations are very simple, normally because the purgers are available in well-built factory line. We need to provide a liquid feed line and a return line. And we have to take the purging points from the different places like condenser outlet or a receiver and connect it to the purger. We can install for gravity feed systems also. The most critical point of a better performance of a purger is to where to install the purge, where to purge the air. The performance of air purger of any brand, any make is totally dependent on the purge point connections. The purge points must be connected where we have this. It should be connected where air can be collected. So where air can be collected, we must understand that air happens at the high side of the refrigeration system. Which the possibility of accumulating air on the low side is very low. So when we have air entering into this air, when compressor gas discharges to the condenser, the velocity of gas and air is same when it is entering into the condenser. But at the end of the condenser, the ammonia gas velocity becomes almost zero. It gets converted to the liquid, and air remains the same. So if you take a purge point at the outlet of the condenser, the possibility of getting air is more. Same thing happens at receiver. When air is at the furthest point from the liquid entry point to the receiver. Now, if we have a condenser, and the question is always asked whether we should purge air from receiver or condenser. In my opinion, purge point should be connected from both the places, because but you need to understand that air will remain in condenser when the receiver temperature is higher than the condenser. That is, if receiver is placed into warmer side or the open side and is directly exposed to the sun, it may happen that receiver temperature is warmer than the condenser temperature. Then air will not enter into it. If air will migrate to the receiver when condenser temperature is higher than the receiver temperature. This can happen if receiver is placed into the cold place, like receiver is inside the plant room, or cooling water temperature in the is rising into the condenser. Then it may lead into the getting condenser. One more condition which we have to know: variation in the refrigerant load also decides the condenser and the receiver temperatures. So if the receiver refrigeration load is decreasing than the rated condition, then it may happen that condenser it has a lower temperature than the receiver. And if refrigeration load is increasing, then condenser may be at higher temperature than the receiver. So purging point should be taken from the both at the both connected to the air purger. Typically, you can see here that you should not take air purger purging point from the inlet of the condenser, which should be from the outlet of the condenser. For receiver, it should not be very close to the. It should not be very close to your uh, liquid entry into the receiver. It should be taken furthest point, because if gas is any flash gas is entering into the system, at the end of the receiver, the velocity of this gas will be low, and you can able to take out the air. Always remember, if you are trying to take a purge point from here and you have even 10% of air, the velocity of ammonia and air is same. So if your purge point is here, 90% of ammonia will come out even if there is a 10% of air. So your purger will always be filled with ammonia. So these purge points are very, very critical, and proper purge point decides totally the functioning of the air purger. You can see here, your purge points can be taken from a common header, or from the for automatic purging has to be at the outlet of the condenser. These are the typical examples of the purge points. If you see here for a PHE condenser, it can be taken at the outlet of the PHE, or a evaporative condenser. This is the purge point. These are the atmospheric condensers or open type condensers. You can see a purge point taken from the header of this condenser. So this is all talks about the air purging or the effects of air. So let's go to the effects of water, or what happens into the effects of being ammonia water into the system. So water contamination is a very commonly observed due to solubility of ammonia into the water. What it means that ammonia has a very high affinity to water, and if water and ammonia comes in together, they mix and they form an aqueous ammonia solution. What we really need is an non-aqueous ammonia refrigerant, or the that's I said is we need 99.95% pure ammonia. We do not want into the water. If our temperature at 30 degrees centigrade, 30% of ammonia can mix into the water. At 0 degrees centigrade, around 46% of ammonia can mix into the water. And minus 30 degrees centigrade, we can have 100% ammonia mixing into the water. Now, what happens when ammonia gets mixed into the water? As I told you, we have a pressure temperature chart on which our efficient system design or calculation is done. However, this pressure temperature chart is totally dependent on the purity of ammonia, or it is what we call as the non-hydrous ammonia, 99.95% pure ammonia. So when we have a pure ammonia, non-hydrous ammonia, that is 0% of ammonia dilution, at minus 0.3 kg per centimeter square, we get minus 40 degrees centigrade. And at 2 kg per centimeter square suction pressure, we'll get minus 9 degrees centigrade. But if we have a 10% of water into the system, instead of minus 40, we'll get only minus 38.6 degrees centigrade. Or instead of minus 9, we'll get minus 7 degrees centigrade. What it means, though, when the water starts getting mixed into the ammonia and ammonia become hydrous ammonia, the temperature chart does not hold good for which our system is designed. And we have to operate the suction at the same suction pressure, the temperature goes high. So if you are operating at minus 0.3, instead of getting minus 40, or at 30% ammonia, water will get only minus 32, or 10% will get only minus 38.6. So it means that our efficient system efficiency will go down, and overall it will affect. We'll see how it affects and how the water comes in. The contamination can happen when the initial stages of construction or while the plant is running. In both the places, water contamination is possible. So when construction is going on initial startup, what are the ways in which the ammonia enters? It may happen that many vendors, many pressure vessel manufacturers, they do the hydropressure testing. We recommend to do dry nitrogen testing, but many people do it hydro testing. When hydro testing is done, water remains into the vessel, is not properly cleaned or it's not properly evacuated. That water will remain in the system continuously. During construction of the projects, many times the pipes or the equipments are lying on site. They are open or the joints are not completed. So at that time in the night, particularly, the dew will occur into those pipes or the joints and enter into the system. Condensation, which is happening while construction is going on, when the joints are sealed, ends are not properly not closed properly, it will occur and it will go in. Many times, pressure testing, while doing the pressure testing, a simple air is used from the atmosphere, air is compressed and used into the system. So that air brings in moisture content into it. Yeah, so whenever, even though you remove that air, the moisture which entered into that system through the air will remain same into the system. This is normally done by when the pressure testing is done by air using ammonia compressors. And whatever the inadequate processes are followed, the water which has entered, it will remain into the system. And secondly, when we are charging the ammonia, we do not know the purity of the ammonia. It may become the anhydrous ammonia. Many times when the ammonia is delivered on the site, it contains the water. And to remove the complete ammonia, to take the maximum benefit of the ammonia into the system, the charging team, they try to, rotate the ammonia in 180 degrees so as they take out all the ammonia. At that time, whatever the ammonia, water inside the cylinders also enter into the system. And when plant is running, there is a possibility that on low pressure side, the tubes may get ruptured, like in shell and tube heat exchanger or ice bank tank coils. And if the which is one way directly connecting into the water and water will enter. Also, while draining the oil from the refrigerant systems or vacuum pipes, sometimes water may enter. And secondly, most important thing is that when a plant is running in a vacuum, and if there is a leakage, so along with the air, the moisture in the air also will enter into the system. And that leak may be through the wall stems or flexible hoses or other connecting joints, and any leaks or flanges or anything. So when this improper procedures or these things relates to the air, water enters into the system and water remains into the system. And when this water remains into the system, the chemical reactions starts taking place between ammonia, oxygen, water, and oil, and it forms a sludge or the free water into the system. Typically, when let's say condition when air pressure is connected in a system, and it is removing of 5 liters of air per minute. So for 35 degree centigrade ambient and 75-degree RH condition, we have so if you look at the chart, you'll get 25 grams of per kg of water into the air. So if the plant is running it for say 6,000 hours, we will be generating almost 46 liter of water per year in a plant. And this water will always remain in the system and will never be drained out. So what happens with water is that water, when it contacts our pipes or the systems are mainly with the steel pipes. So water starts corrosion of these pressure vessels or the pipes used into the things or the boils. And when water mixes with the oil, it starts the aging process of oil. Oil life gets down. Compressor oil starts forming into organic acids and sludge is getting formed. And also it really increases the wear and tear of the compressor. Failures, the compressor part fails, oil volume or the quantity of the oil required increases, regular Frequency of oil change requires more things. As there is water starts accumulating, the pressure drops, increases through the pipelines. Then the performance of ammonia pump is affected. Evaporators, because ammonia accumulates on low pressure side, evaporator performance affects. So as I've shown you the chart, we're operating at a lower suction pressure to maintain the desired pressure. Our power requirement goes high, and so which totally lowers the system efficiency and increases the electricity cost. These are some of the photographs of damages which has occurred into the compressor due to the water getting into the system. You can see a water accumulated into the oil side glass, or how the water gets when the oil is drained, how these filters are choked with the oil and sludge. The main effect occurs of water happens on the bearings of the bearing life of the compressor. As the quantity of the water increases in the oil, bearing life decreases tremendously. Where this water accumulates? Normally, water accumulates on the low pressure side. Water never accumulates into the high pressure side. So if it is a flooded system or a gravity fed system, it will be on the evaporator and surge drum sides. It is in DX system, it will be in the suction accumulators. And in two-stage systems, it will be on the low pressure side. If it is the ammonia pump system or the overfeed system, it will happen into the pump receivers. Why it happens like that? Its main reason is that there is a huge difference between ammonia and water in the vapor pressure. For example, at 2 degrees centigrade, the vapor pressure of ammonia is 3.5 kg per centimeter, whereas water is 0.007 kg per centimeter. So even when that at 3.5 kg centimeter, the ammonia evaporates, water does not evaporate and remains in the liquid form only, and it starts accumulating into the low pressure side. Typically at 0 degrees centigrade, water pressure is 0.61 kPa, as ammonia is 329. And at 15 degrees centigrade, water is 1.71, ammonia is 620. You can see at different temperature conditions, water pressure is very low. So even though the ammonia gas is evaporating due to the heat from the heat exchanger side, the evaporator side, water will not evaporate and it will remain into the liquid form. So question comes in that how do I know there is a water in my system? The most important or the simplest form of knowing is that you are not able to maintain the temperature at rated suction pressure. If your plant is not able to maintain rated evaporating temperature at suction pressure, it definitely indicates that there is a water in your system. If you want to measure the quantity of the water, you can do that. You need to have a water sampler kit. You need to use the proper protection PPE devices like face shield, gloves, and systems, water bath. So what you do is that you connect drain points at the low pump discharge or the oil drain side of the walls, connect walls to connect your water samplers, and take the transfer the known quantity of ammonia into a water sampler. You can see here a water sampler which is marked for the different colors. So you drain 100 ml of ammonia, keep it into the cold environment, and then let the ammonia inside it get evaporated, and whatever the remaining is will be the water. You can see here the water quantity. So you need to follow the procedures, need to use the, as I said, PPE equipments. I would recommend that when you are taking a sample here in sampler, you have two such bottles. First, you take a sample, just take that bottle out, replace it with another sampler bottle, and then they use the second sampler for getting the liquids. That will give you the correct readings of the system. You have to follow a complete procedure, and sometimes it is possible that ammonia may not come immediately. Low side water may not come. You may have to wait for 5 minutes and follow correct procedure. You can drain so depending on your operating temperature, and once the ammonia is evaporated, you can calculate the total quantity of the water into your system. So that's way I can calculate, but how I remove the water? So we can use an ammonia purifier, ammonia dehydrator system, which removes the water. This system is provided with a coil, which can where the liquid is fed from the receiver and is put it back into the system. And from the low pressure points, tappings are taken from like LP vessel outlet or the evaporator outlets, evaporator drain pipes, and brought it into the contact with this heat exchanger. So because of the heat into this heat exchanger, what is the ammonia, it comes in contact, it gets evaporated and goes back to the system. And if there is in the water, it gets accumulated at the bottom of the this ammonia dehydrator. So normally when it is filled with the water, there will be a frosting on this dehydrator. And when it gets water starts accumulating into the dehydrator, the frosting will go. So you can come to know that there is no, when there is no frosting on this lower side of this, you can drain the ammonia from it. This is a typical installation drawing for the ammonia system, how to connect into the running system. So this keeps the water ammonia purified continuously online, and you don't have to stop the plant to make ammonia purify the ammonia, and it saves a lot of energy in terms of plant operations and things. These are the case studies which are actually done for a 300 kilowatt booster system, which has got a -7 condensing and -40-degree evaporating temperature. Power required was 80 kilowatts for a screw booster compressor. If there is a 10% of water, it means that instead of operating at -40, the plant has to, suction temperature has to brought down to -42 to achieve the same results. Power goes to almost goes high by 7.8 kilowatts. So for 6,000 running hours, the extra cost of this water is 4,68,000 pesos or 468,000 pesos. For a two-stage system like a two-stage piston compressor or screw compressor, the power required becomes more 10 kilowatts, and saving becomes almost 600,000 pesos in a year. So we can conclude that this water definitely makes us pay regularly for the running of the plant. So what are the today's takeaways from the presentation? That air accumulates at the high pressure side of the ratio system like condensers and receivers. Presence of air increases the discharge pressure, increases power consumption, reduces refrigerant capacity, increases wear and tear of the compressor, damages the scaling onto the, increases the scaling on condenser, and it all costs money to us. So we have to remove the air continuously, preferably online, so that it saves us money. Secondly, when there is a water in the system, water accumulates on the low pressure side of the system. So there's a difference between air and water. Air accumulates at the high pressure side, and water accumulates on the low pressure side of the system. Ammonia has a great affinity with water. So the moment the water comes into the contact with the ammonia, it becomes hydrous ammonia. And hydrous ammonia means there is the change in the operating pressure conditions. You do not get the same temperature at the same rated pressure for ammonia. You have to operate at lower suction pressures, which results in lower system efficiency, increases the electricity cost, causes the corrosion into the refrigerant cycles, accelerates the aging process of the oil. Oil changeover frequency is very high, and the damages to the compressors are also very high, increases the maintenance of the compressor, service cost and downtime also increases a lot. So remove the water, keep on monitoring the suction and discharge pressures, which saves a lot of money to us and makes your plant more safe and healthy. So this saves a lot of things. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you. Thank you for giving me opportunity to be over here. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Anand Sriram Joshi. The PSMU recognizes your valuable support to the 68th National Conference and would like to honor you by the Certificate of Appreciation.
Anan, you unshare your presentation.
So shall I remove my screen share?
Yeah. Now you're okay. You look handsome.
I need to see where is that.
Okay, the certificate will be flashed to the screen, please.
I'll just remove the screen share. Okay. Yeah.
Wow, that's your certificate, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, sir.
Thank you, PSME.
Okay, thank you once again to our technical speaker. Now we proceed to our question and answers, but first, let me acknowledge the presence of our panel of reactors. But before that, may we request our panel of reactors to please limit your questions to maybe 2 questions so that we can beat or meet the target time, okay? So our panel of reactors, Engineer Wilfredo F. Estrella, RMEE, Engineer Armando C. Imata, PME, and Engineer Edgardo F. Florindo, PME. Please proceed. Panel of reactors, please.
I would like to turn over the reactor to Yuri De Villa muna, Engineer Zuniga.
Okay, please proceed, sir.
Okay. Good evening. This is question from the audience. How much does the water contamination cause in lost capacity and extra power consumption? And how much of the service and maintenance costs could be related to water contamination?
As I shown you, the cost of water is very high. If we have a 10% water into the system, our temperature, operating temperature goes down by almost 3 degrees centigrade. So when suction pressure, you have to operate at the lower suction pressure, and your energy. So you to get the same refrigerant capacity, you need more compressor power, more compressor capacity, and in terms of a percentage, you can say that for a minus 40 degrees centigrade plant, the water, just presence of water in getting the desired results cost around 15% power. And in terms of other maintenance issues, the cost of the oil, cost of the components or the bearing failures is very high. And my experience was that sometimes you have to change the oil 3 or 4 times in a year. If you are having a minus 40 degrees centigrade refrigerant plant with this synthetic oil, the cost of the oil 3 or 4 times change in a year is almost 50% of the cost of the compressor.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question from the audience. You mentioned that ammonia explosion is one possible cause of air contamination on the system. Question, what is the temperature and pressure to reach the scenario? As well all know, compressor are equipped with control switch to protect from overpressure.
Compressors are provided with pressure switches to protect from the overpressure, and theoretically it should be working. They also have the safety valve to operate if the pressure goes high. But in some conditions, these pressure switches are bypassed, or the safety valves are not operated properly, and pressure goes high, maybe around 18 or 19 kg, and there's a possibility of ammonia with a very high temperature around 150, 160 degrees centigrade. Ammonia may explode into the nitrogen and hydrogen. It's more of breaking of ammonia into the 2 parts because of high temperature, high pressure conditions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
So no more questions, sir? Okay. So thank you very much to our panel of reactors and the technical speakers. Because of limited time, an unanswered question will be emailed to you by our assigned speaker. before we let you go, gentlemen, especially Engineer Anad, let's have a, please flaunt your best smile, Engineer Anad. Yeah, okay? To capture this session's insightful discussion. Panel of reactors, your best smile, please.
Okay.
Sumakit tuloy ang panga ni Sir Imata. Okay, so please don't forget to answer the evaluation form via Google Drive provided in the link on the chat box to get your certificate for this topic. Again, thank you, Sir Engineer Anad. Please, we're taking a quick break. Keep it here. The 68th PSME National Conference will be right back.